Soul caster.
He didn't look at me once while I gave the toast. 25 years of marriage, and the man couldn't hold my eyes for 10 seconds. I stood there, holding a crystal flute of Veuve Clicquot we couldn't afford when we got married, smiling like I meant it, toasting to a man who was already mentally undressing someone else. And the worst part? I still meant every word. That's the kind of idiot I was. We were at the country club he always hated, said it smelled like old cologne and new money. But I chose it because it overlooked the lake where he proposed. Thought it'd be poetic. Maybe remind him. Stupid, right? I ordered white tulips for the table. His favourite. Or at least, they were. Until I found a receipt later for a bouquet of orange ranunculus, delivered to an address I didn't recognise. The whole evening, I watched him like you watch a fire you don't want to admit is spreading. He laughed too hard at jokes that weren't funny, checked his phone under the table like a teenager, vanished twice to check on the wine, which I knew was a lie, because the sommelier was a 50-year-old man named Greg with a lazy eye and no patience for drama. And every time he came back, his tie was a little looser, his guilt a little louder. People always say it's the big gestures that ruin a marriage, an affair, a fight, someone walking out. No. It's the 1,000 little moments where you feel your love shriveling and you convince yourself it's just a bad week, or stress, or hormones. I stood there carving salmon for a man who hadn't touched me in 6 months, and I still worried the risotto was too salty. My daughter flew in from Seattle. She wore that emerald wrap dress Paul bought her last Christmas. When she hugged me, she whispered, "You okay?" I said yes, like every woman says yes when she means, "I'm barely holding it together, but I'll die before I make a scene." That's how we're trained. Smile, host, make sure the glasses stay full and the tension doesn't show. And if you're reading this far, especially if you're one of the many just lurking without subscribing, take 2 seconds and hit follow. It's the only way we know anyone's out there. It helps more than you think. The truth is, I saw it coming. I just hoped I was wrong. 3 days before the party, I found a cufflink in the dryer. Not Paul's. Gold, oval, engraved with the initials JL. Paul's are square, silver, monogrammed with his full name, like a narcissist. I asked him, "Lose something?" He didn't even blink. Said it must belong to the dry cleaner. They mix things up all the time. Sure, because dry cleaners just toss random jewelry in with your socks. And then there was the dinner reservation I never made. Open table confirmation popped up on our shared laptop. 2 people. Downtown. Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. I was at book club that night. He knew that. He used to laugh at how seriously we took our murder mysteries. I cancelled it without a word. He never mentioned it. But the moment that twisted the knife deeper came that night, during dessert. Our son, Peter, was showing off baby photos of his newborn. Everyone crowded around, cooing. I looked over at Paul. He was smiling, at his phone, typing fast. That idiot grin he used to get when I sent him dirty texts in the early 2000s. I could have smashed his screen with the damn cake knife. Still, I played my role. I cut slices of the lemon raspberry tiered cake, the same one we had at our wedding. Made a joke about how Paul still can't dance. Laughed with our friends, clinked glasses, hugged relatives who smelled like stale perfume and nostalgia. But inside, I was writing a list. Not of guests, not of thank you cards, a list of every asset in my name. You see, Paul never bothered with the boring stuff. That's what he called finances, paperwork, bills. I handled it. Not because I had to, but because I didn't trust him to remember the electric bill, let alone a mortgage. When we married, I kept the deed to the apartment in my name. In case, I told myself. I said it so casually, even I didn't notice how hard I was bracing for impact. So as the night wore on and Paul drank too much Sauvignon Blanc and ignored the playlist I curated for weeks, I knew. He wasn't just drifting. He was already gone. Somewhere between the third refill and the long bathroom break, he'd left this marriage in everything but body. And I was done, waiting for him to admit it. The candles burned low. The guests started saying their goodbyes. Paul was in the corner, whispering into his phone. I looked around the room, the people who had known us for decades, who would all go home and say, "They seemed so happy." I took a deep breath, held my glass tight. Because if he was going to burn it all down, I'd make sure the explosion was mutual. He clinked his glass twice. That fake, gentlemanly tap he always did when he wanted to be the center of attention. Everyone turned to him, expecting some rehearsed, sentimental speech. Something bland and saccharine. Maybe a joke about how I put up with him all these years. Maybe a toast to many more. I braced myself for forced gratitude and recycled charm. Instead, Paul adjusted his collar, cleared his throat, and said, "Thank you all for coming tonight. It means a lot, to Judith and me. But I need to say something, and I need to say it now." Already, I knew. I didn't know the words, but I knew the rhythm. That tension in his voice wasn't nerves. It was ego ballooning. The self-righteousness of a man who thinks breaking vows in front of friends is some brave act of honesty. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "I'm done pretending. I've met someone else. I'm leaving." The silence was instant and brutal, the kind that crackles, forks froze, wine glasses halted mid-air. Someone whispered, "What the hell?" Our daughter made a sound I've only ever heard once, when she broke her arm in middle school. A sharp inhale, like the air had been punched out of her. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw my drink like some bad soap opera wife. I just picked up my champagne, turned to face him directly, and smiled. Not the soft, camera-ready kind. The kind that bares teeth. "Perfect timing," I said, lifting the glass. "I just sold the apartment you live in." You'd think that line would get a laugh, but no one moved. Not even the waiter with the espresso tray. Just one collective, horrified stillness, because deep down, they knew I wasn't joking. Not even a little. Paul blinked. Twice. His jaw twitched. The way it does when he's doing the math in his head, realizing the floor just dropped out from under him. "What?" he said, quieter this time, not defiant, confused. I sipped. The bubbles tasted better than they ever had. "Sold it last week. Signed papers Tuesday. You remember Tuesday, right? That was the night you said you were working late, but came home smelling like department store perfume and lemon soap?" The color drained from his face. His ears went red first. Always the ears with him. Our son Peter stood up. "Mom," he started, his voice trembling. I waved him down gently. "It's okay. Let your father finish his big moment." Paul looked around the room like it had betrayed him. His old college roommate was already checking the time. Our niece, bless her, stared at her phone, pretending not to listen. Even the event photographer lowered her camera slowly, like, "Should I still be taking pictures of this?" I didn't think you'd," he started. "No, you didn't," I interrupted. "You never do." Because that's Paul's entire life, coasting on the assumption that no one will call him out, that women will clean up after him, emotionally, financially, socially. that will smile through dinners, apologize for his moods, smooth over his half-truths. But this time, the trap wasn't invisible. It was velvet-lined and locked from the outside. The catering staff kept moving because they're trained for disaster. A fresh tray of tiramisu hit the table. No one touched it. Paul just stood there, blinking, like a man waking up in someone else's house. "You can't just sell it," he muttered. "Technically, I could," I replied. And I did. The apartment was mine before the marriage, Paul. My name on the deed. You were just living there, like a long-term guest with benefits. His voice rose half an octave. "This is insane. What are you going to do? Throw me out?" I shrugged. "Don't need to. The new owner has plans for it. I told them I'd be out by the weekend. You'll need to sort out your own arrangements." It wasn't just about the apartment. It was about everything. The meals I cooked while he rolled his eyes at my seasoning, the vacations I planned he never thanked me for, the way he mocked my friends, how he forgot my 60th birthday, but remembered to Venmo a 27-year-old bartender for yoga classes. I didn't care about humiliating him. That wasn't the point. I just wanted the truth to have teeth. Paul looked around the room one last time, searching for someone to back him up. He caught the eye of a woman we've known for decades, Anne, who once joked we'd be the last couple standing. She turned away. He left before dessert. No one stopped him. I raised my glass again once the door clicked shut behind him. "To freedom," I said quietly. A few guests clapped. Just a few. The rest sat there, stunned, their perfect little dinner party shattered. I didn't care. I took another sip, then reached for the tiramisu. Still not sweet enough, but close. The funny thing is, the idea didn't come to me in some blaze of fury or after some dramatic betrayal. It was subtler. It started the day I realized I was boiling pasta and crying over garlic bread, because Paul had once again forgotten our dinner plans. Not cancelled, just never showed up. No call, no message, just silence and that tired excuse when he walked in. "Oh, you didn't remind me." That night, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine and thought, what would he do if I just disappeared? Not in the dramatic, Lifetime movie way. I mean legally, financially, strategically. What would it look like if I quietly, calmly, dismantled the world he thought was his? Turns out, it looked a lot like spreadsheets and manila folders. I started with the deed, pulled out the file box from under the bed. He never even knew it existed. I flipped through our old documents, wedding license, tax returns, expired passports, a couple of crumpled birthday cards. And there it was. My name, solo, bold, on the deed to our apartment. Dated 5 months before our wedding. Bought with the money from my mother's estate. I remember telling Paul at the time, "We can always add you later." He'd laughed, kissed me and said, "Why bother? You're better at this stuff." I nodded, thinking it was love. Now I know it was laziness and entitlement. From there, the plan formed slowly. No rush, no impulse, just quiet calculation in the spaces he gave me. While he was out at work dinners or helping Greg with his divorce, a lie so obvious I almost respected the boldness, I gathered papers, mortgage info, insurance documents, appraisals. He noticed none of it, because Paul never paid attention to anything that didn't have a screen or a reflection of himself in it. I was wallpaper. Useful, invisible, reliable. That worked in my favor. 3 weeks in, I made an appointment with a real estate agent, Stephanie, sharp as hell, discreet, and hungry for a challenge. I didn't tell her the whole story, just said I was considering a move. She came by, walked the place, complimented my taste like a professional liar, and said, "We can list it off market, high-end clients only. No paper trail till you're ready." I liked her instantly. The appraisal came in higher than expected. The market was up, the neighborhood hot. Stephanie raised an eyebrow. "Thinking of cashing out?" I nodded. Eventually. Eventually became soon after Paul came home one night smelling like gin and lilac. Lilac. I haven't worn floral perfume since the Bush administration. He didn't even notice the stack of financial documents on the kitchen counter. Thought it was more of your boring money stuff. That's what he called it. "You've always had a head for that, babe. I'm more the big picture guy." Right. The big picture being whatever woman happened to stroke his ego that week. So I moved quickly, set up a trust account in my name, transferred funds, discreetly closed our shared savings, consolidated accounts under the radar. Every banker I spoke to raised an eyebrow at first. Older woman, alone, serious. But I brought paperwork, facts, numbers. They fell in line. One young rep, maybe 30, leaned in and whispered, "Leaving him?" I smiled. "He just doesn't know it yet." 3 days before the party, I signed the sale agreement, full price offer, all cash. Stephanie winked and said, "You want me to have them wait until Monday to announce it?" "Yes," I said. "Let's give the man his party." Even then, I wasn't sure I'd use the line. The, "I just sold the apartment you live in." I thought maybe I'd let him leave quietly. Maybe I'd be classy. But that was before he stood in front of my friends, my family, my children, and tried to humiliate me. Before he weaponized honesty like it was noble. So I smiled, raised my glass, and cut him off at the knees. Now, when I think back, the part that still makes me laugh, not bitter, truly laugh, is how sure he was that I'd be blindsided, that I'd beg, cry, scream, make a scene. He underestimated me like it was a reflex. And that's the story of our marriage, isn't it? He never saw me as dangerous. He saw me as dependable. And he forgot. The most dangerous women are the ones who quietly handle the boring stuff, until they don't. 2 days after the party, I saw her. And just like that, the last of my doubt dried up. It was one of those crisp, too bright afternoons where the air feels like it's daring you to feel optimistic. I was sitting at a corner table at Café Montclair, the same place Paul always refused to go because the coffee's too strong and the chairs are too small. I liked it precisely for those reasons. The chairs made you sit upright, alert, no slouching into comfort. I was sipping a black Americano, scrolling half-heartedly through rental listings, when I caught them in the reflection of the cafe window first. At first, I thought it was just some couple being offensively loud and touchy for broad daylight. But then I turned my head. There he was, Paul, standing like he still owned something, laughing a little too loudly, hand grazing the back of a woman whose red coat looked like it cost more than his car payment. And she was, well, younger, blonde, obvious, perfect white teeth, overlined lips, the kind of curves that scream gym membership and strategic injections. She looked like an ad for divorce. She clung to his arm like it was a cruise rail. Then she kissed him. Full on the mouth, in the middle of the sidewalk, in broad daylight. No shame, no secrecy. She laughed after, the kind of laugh you let out when you think you've won. I didn't flinch, didn't duck or hide. I just reached for my phone, turned off the camera sound, and took the photo through the glass. One shot. Clean. framed by the glare of late afternoon sun and the cafe's gold-lettered window decal. It almost looked romantic. I didn't take it out of jealousy. There was nothing left to envy. The man had publicly detonated our marriage like it was a TED talk on bravery. What was there to pine for? No. I took it because my lawyer had asked, months ago, if there was any evidence of extramarital behavior. At the time, I had nothing concrete. A hunch, a few perfume-scented receipts, a lingering whiff of someone else's shampoo on his shirts. But now I had a time-stamped image, and a very good reason to revisit the post-nuptial clauses he swore would never matter. I forwarded the photo without a caption. My attorney, Rochelle, responded within 5 minutes. Got it. Very useful. Let's talk Monday. That's the thing men like Paul never seem to grasp. They think betrayal is about the heart, that if you're not wailing or setting their clothes on fire, they've somehow escaped the consequences. They forget women can burn you quietly, legally, elegantly, with a smile. She wore heels too tall for walking. Her laugh echoed as they passed the cafe. Paul never saw me. He was too busy pulling out her chair across the street. Probably ordered a Pinot Noir and made some smug joke about finally living his truth. I hope she liked that line. It's the same one he used when he dumped his last girlfriend before we met, though he swore they were already over. I watched her touch his hand with the exaggerated sweetness of someone still auditioning. It was almost sad. She didn't know yet. She didn't know he left dishes in the sink to soak for days, that he'd get angry if she used the good towels, that he wouldn't remember her birthday until Facebook told him, that he'd mock her friends, that he'd come home smelling like pizza at 11 p.m. and insist he was at a work thing. Or maybe she did know. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she thought he was a stepping stone. I wasn't angry at her. I wasn't anything. She was just a woman in red, a symbol, a final puzzle piece, and a very convenient witness for the slow burn case I was now methodically building. That night, I printed the photo and slipped it into a folder labeled Personal Affairs. The folder already contained a few other gems: the gym membership statement for a location 2 zip codes away, the wine bar loyalty card he kept hidden in his glove box, the second phone bill with a number that never showed up on mine. Let him play house with his new beginning. Let him think he traded up. While he rehearsed his little fantasy life with the woman in red, I was working on something a lot less romantic. My ending, my terms, my clean, surgical exit. And this time it wouldn't come with a toast. He showed up with a suitcase like he still had a key to my life. The doorman told me later, Paul tried to breeze in like nothing had changed. Same leather overnight bag he used on our last vacation, which I now realize was probably more of a guilt offering than a getaway. The bag was older than the woman in red, and far more loyal. But the locks had been changed 2 days earlier, quietly, professionally. The locksmith was discreet and fast, didn't ask questions. Just nodded when I said, "Make sure it's not just new. It's different." Paul's key wouldn't turn, not even halfway, so he buzzed, and buzzed, and buzzed. I watched the little screen light up on my phone from the safety of my friend Anne's guest room, 2 neighborhoods away. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called. 6 times in 3 minutes. 7th time, I picked up. "Judith," he snapped, "what the hell is going on?" I sipped my tea. "Hi, Paul. I can't get in. Did you change the locks?" "Yes." "You can't do that." "Actually," I said, flipping through a copy of the sale documents with one hand, "I can. It was never your apartment." He went quiet. That pause, the one I know too well, where he's not stunned, just recalibrating, rehearsing his next performance. I live there, he said finally. That's my home. No, Paul. You moved in after we got married. I never added your name to the deed. You've never paid into the mortgage. You don't even know who the building manager is. That's not the point, he growled. You're throwing me out like trash. No, I replied. Trash gets taken out on Tuesdays. This is just a clean break. That's when the threats started. Classic Paul. You'll regret this. You can't just erase me. I'll take you to court. I have rights. We were married 25 years, Judith. And in all that time, I said evenly, you never once asked to co-sign a single thing. You wanted to feel taken care of. Congratulations. You were. Don't patronize me. I'm not. I'm informing you. He made a sound somewhere between a snarl and a laugh. This is about the party, isn't it? You're embarrassed. I humiliated you, and now you're getting revenge. I didn't rise to it. That's what he wanted. For me to scream, cry, act like the unhinged woman he could dismiss to his lawyer. Instead, I said, Paul, this isn't revenge. It's real estate. That's the moment it sank in for him. The silence on the other end of the line wasn't rage, it was calculation dying. He knew me well enough to realize I wouldn't budge. And deep down, I think he knew this day would come. He just always assumed he'd be the one to walk away first. I don't have anywhere to go, he muttered. Not my problem, I said. You're really doing this? I nodded, even though he couldn't see. I did it, Paul. It's done. The apartment is sold. I handed over the keys yesterday. I only stayed long enough to clear out my things. But what the hell am I supposed to do? I took a slow breath. Maybe try that woman in red, the one who giggles like she's never had to fill out a tax form. See if she's got a guest room. He called me a word I won't repeat here. The kind of word that men use when they realize the last rope they thought they held has been cut. I hung up. Then I blocked him. There wasn't an ounce of guilt. No tremble, no second guessing. Just a long, clean silence. Afterward, I walked through Anne's garden, still holding my tea. The roses were blooming despite the frost. That's what I felt like. Rooted, trimmed back, but alive. Not angry, just done. He had packed a suitcase assuming he'd come home. But Paul never noticed it hadn't been his home in a very long time. He was always just a tenant in my life. And now his lease had expired. Of course he tried to spin it. Paul never met a story he couldn't bend into a pity pitch. By the end of the week, he'd made the rounds. Old friends, golf buddies, even my second cousin Lisa, who once told me I was too polished to be relatable. He leaned into it, painted himself as the blind-sided husband, abandoned after 25 years for no good reason. I could practically hear him. She changed, got cold, too proud to talk, always controlling everything. He started with the usual suspects, Rick and Dana, the couple we used to double date with before Dana got sober and Rick got flirty. Paul met Rick for beers and whined about how I threw him out like a dog. Rick, being Rick, lapped it up, texted me something smug about hearing both sides. I replied with a copy of the property sale, the lease timeline, and, just for fun, a screenshot of Paul's recent open table booking for 2 at 9 p.m. on our anniversary night. No response. I didn't need to plead. I just let the facts speak. Cold, precise, boring even, just the way Paul always hated them. Dana, for the record, called me 2 days later. You don't owe anyone an explanation, she said. But if you ever want one, I'm around. And for what it's worth, Rick's sleeping on the couch. But it was the subtler shift that truly made Paul unravel. Our mutual circle, the bridge group, the neighbours, the PTA leftovers from when our kids were in school, started going quiet on him. Not confrontational, just distant. Birthday party invitations dried up. Let's grab lunch. Texts stopped landing. No more likes on his Facebook single and thriving posts, especially the one with the cryptic Nietzsche quote. He noticed. You could tell by the way he tried to overcompensate online. Photos of artisanal salads, check-ins at events he used to call bougie nonsense. Even posted a selfie with the woman in red, captioned, "New Beginnings." Her name was Amber, by the way. Of course it was. She looked like she spelled it with two Y's and a secret OnlyFans. But nothing topped the moment he lost his last defense. His sister, Lorraine. Now, Lorraine and I never got along. Too similar, probably. Sharp-tongued women who ran households like CEOs. She once accused me of emasculating Paul because I balanced our budget in Excel. She also gave me a cookbook on how to keep a man's heart as a wedding gift. Spoiler, I never opened it. So when she called, I expected an ambush. Instead, she sighed and said, "I get it now." I blinked. Sorry? Everything. The party. The apartment. I thought you were being cruel. But Paul, he's unraveling, Judith. And now that I see it, I realize you held him together. For years. I didn't respond at first. She continued. You were always so calm. I thought it was control, but it was grace, and I didn't see it. She didn't apologize. Lorraine doesn't do apologies. But it was enough. And when she ended the call with, "If you ever want to come by for tea, I've got that lemon cake you like," I felt something shift. Vindication isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet door opening that used to be bolted shut. Paul must have sensed the tide turning because he started texting me again. No more threats, just limp little bait. Hey, can we talk? Then, none of this had to happen. And my favorite, we were good once, weren't we? I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Because what Paul never understood is that I wasn't isolated. I wasn't alone. I was just quiet. The kind of quiet that listens, stores receipts, builds networks, wins allies one dinner and school fundraiser at a time. For 25 years, I showed up, volunteered, cooked, donated, sent condolence cards, remembered birthdays. Not for leverage, but because that's who I am. And now, it paid off. Because when the dust settled, the story people believed wasn't his sob song about betrayal. It was mine. A woman who gave her best years to a man who didn't deserve her, and walked away with dignity, precision, and the deed. The panic didn't hit him when I changed the locks, or when mutual friends stopped returning his calls. Not even when he found out the apartment had a new owner and he wasn't on the deed. No, Paul didn't panic until money got involved. That's when his voice cracked. It started with a Thursday morning bank visit. Routine, he probably thought. Maybe he was planning to drain the joint savings account, sock a little something away with Amber for a beach rental and a bottle of cheap champagne to toast fresh starts. He must have strutted into that branch with his usual smug charm, the kind that worked on waitresses and bored receptionists. But when he slid his ID across the counter and said, "I'd like to transfer 30,000, he got a different kind of smile. "Sorry, sir. That account is no longer joint," the teller lightly said. "What?" "It was separated on October 12th. Only one authorized user remains. My name. He must have felt it then. Not betrayal, not confusion, disempowerment. That ugly little itch beneath the skin when someone who used to smooth your life like a fitted sheet suddenly folds it up and walks away with the linen closet. I know this because 20 minutes later he called me. I was walking out of yoga, holding a green smoothie I didn't even want, when I saw his name flash across the screen. I let it ring once, twice. Picked up on the third, just to hear what desperation sounded like from a man who once said, "Judith, you'll never leave me. You need me too much." "Judith," he said, already strained, "we need to talk." "Oh, I thought you were busy starting over. New life, new love, right?" He exhaled hard. "Come on, don't do that. I just went to the bank." And? What the hell did you do? Where's the money?" "Which money?" "Our savings." "Oh, that money," I said, sipping my drink. "My half is in a trust. Has been for a few weeks now." "You moved it without telling me." "You mean, did I quietly and legally move my own assets from a jointly titled account into a protected trust because I anticipated you'd try to clean me out the minute I stopped playing house?" "Yes." "You can't just—" "Judith, we were married. That was our money." "No, Paul. It was money we deposited into an account you never once checked. You never even set up online access. You thought remembering the password was too much trouble, remember?" He didn't speak. I could hear the engine of his logic stalling. I imagined him pacing, rubbing the back of his neck the way he does when he's cornered. Maybe Amber was in the room, hearing the tone shift. Maybe she was starting to see the cracks. "I'm not asking for all of it," he said finally. "But we can figure something out. I don't want this to get ugly." "We already did, Paul," I said calmly. "What?" "We already figured it out. I just did the work while you were out sampling wine and women." "I don't have access to anything," he muttered, voice rising. "I know." "You think this is going to make you feel better? Freezing me out of my own life?" "No, Paul. It's not about feeling better. It's about finally being in control of what I built." He got quiet again. That quiet wasn't about listening. It was about realizing. For the first time in 25 years, he had nothing left to dangle over me. No house, no car, no savings, no soft landings, not even emotional currency. I'd cashed out of the entire system. The real irony? The very systems he'd mocked, the Excel budgets, the labeled folders, the boring financial talks, were the same systems that saved me. All those years, he said, "Can't we just skip this stuff?" While I explained tax implications over dinner. Turns out, I wasn't talking to him. I was future-proofing myself. After he hung up, I sent one final message, brief, unsentimental, airtight. "All financial matters moving forward should go through my attorney. You'll find her contact below. No salutation, no emotion, just boundaries." Because it wasn't just about moving money, it was about shifting power. Quietly, legally, permanently. And this time he couldn't talk his way back in. Not with charm, not with guilt, not with 30,000 in a joint account he assumed I'd forgotten to protect. I found the card by accident. It was tucked between warranty papers and a half-used checkbook in the old desk drawer I hadn't opened since before the pandemic. I was looking for an instruction manual for the slow cooker, something to keep me occupied that didn't involve lawyers, logistics, or other people's opinions. And there it was, slipped beneath the brittle edge of a utility bill from 2013, cream-coloured, faded at the fold. His handwriting immediately recognizable, big, slanted letters that always looked like they were trying to outrun their own meaning. Inside, Judith, you've given me everything. I hope I deserve it. No flourish, no signature, just that one line, like a riddle I never bothered to solve. I remember the card now. It came with a bouquet he picked up from the grocery store on his way home, because he forgot my birthday until his sister texted him that morning. I remember pretending not to notice the receipt still tucked under the cellophane wrap. 18.99 and a coupon. But the line stuck, even then. At the time, I thought it was humility. Now I know better. It was a pre-confession, a soft plea wrapped in faux sincerity. I hope I deserve it, because deep down, he knew he didn't. And yet I kept giving. I gave him structure when he lived like a man raised by jazz musicians and impulse. I gave him grace when he forgot anniversaries, when he spent money we didn't have, when he rolled his eyes during hard conversations and turned every conflict into an inconvenience. I gave him cover at parties, context in front of our kids, and credit in public he never earned. But most of all, I gave him belief. I believed in a version of him that never actually existed, not fully. I stood in my new rental kitchen, holding that card like it might bite me. The walls still smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon oil, the way clean slates do. I stared at those words, I hope I deserve it, and thought, you didn't, you don't, and I'm done pretending you ever did. So I lit a match, not dramatic, no screaming, just a steady flame touched to the edge of the card. It caught fast, curled into itself like it was ashamed. I dropped it in the sink and watched it turn to ash, one flake at a time. I opened the window, let the smoke out, let whatever ghost of that line drift into the November air and dissolve. It wasn't rage, it wasn't even grief, it was relief. I didn't need the card. I didn't need any of it. The trinkets, the memories, the echoes of we had good years. Maybe we did. Maybe they just looked that way from a distance. But I'm done squinting at history and calling it love. That afternoon, I cleaned out the rest of the drawer, tossed expired warranties, shredded tax stubs, folded away old birthday cards from the kids. I kept one, Peter's drawing from second grade, a crooked house with stick-figure parents holding hands. I laughed when I saw Paul's cartoon hairline. Too generous, even then. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the chair by the window, the one I'd dragged over myself, positioned not toward the TV, but the light. That's where I read now. That's where I let the silence in. Because this was never just about revenge. That part's done. Now it's reinvention, reclaiming, reassembly. The woman who stayed quiet for too long has been replaced by someone who no longer asks if she's too much, or not enough, or too harsh for protecting what she built. She just opens the window, lets the smoke out, and starts again. He's sleeping on a pull-out couch that smells faintly of dog and divorce. The cushions sag in the middle, and every time he shifts, the frame creaks like it's laughing at him. He hasn't slept properly in days. Not since Amber, the woman in red with the 1,000-watt smile and the attention span of a fruit fly, told him she wasn't looking for anything permanent. She'd said it over tapas. Paul thought they were celebrating. She thought they were clarifying. I'm not a wife type, she shrugged, swirling her sangria. You're still figuring yourself out. He laughed, assuming it was a tease. But her tone didn't change, her expression didn't either. I just got divorced, he said. You just got kicked out, she corrected. It stung more than he'd admit. And within the week, he was dragging his suitcase, again, into the spare room of his old friend, Barry's condo. Barry, who lived alone, collected vintage typewriters and hadn't updated his furniture since 1997. Barry didn't ask questions. He just said, "Couch folds out," and handed him a towel that smelled like attic. Now it's 11:47 p.m., and Paul's staring at the ceiling, counting regrets like ceiling tiles. The digital clock blinks red, aggressive. His phone is warm from his palm. He's been scrolling through photos for an hour. Their silver anniversary. Judith in that slate blue wrap dress. Elegant, understated. She never chased attention, but the room always turned when she walked in. She was smiling in the photo he paused on, glass raised, head tilted toward him. Not a fake smile, a real one. Before he opened his mouth and detonated the room. And behind her, Peter laughing, their daughter Rachel with her hand over her heart. The kind of photo that made people say, "What a beautiful family." He'd thought he was the brave one that night, thought he was stepping into a future that had been calling to him like sirens in stilettos. Now he's scrolling backward through decades of birthdays, holidays, beach trips, moments that felt disposable then but seem monumental now. Judith waving from the porch with a glass of iced tea. Judith holding a newborn Peter with eyes like his. Judith asleep on the couch with a novel splayed across her chest. He taps on one photo, zooms in. There's a shadow of himself in the background, mid-sentence, hand gesturing. She's not looking at him. Had she stopped seeing him even then? The silence of the room gnaws at him. No dishwasher humming, no Judith flipping pages in bed, no scent of that bergamot hand cream she kept by her nightstand. Just the mechanical sigh of the old ceiling fan and the occasional cough from Barry's cat, which may or may not be dying. His bank app shows exactly 438,012. He thought he'd have more time, more cushion, more options. The woman he left everything for had packed her things faster than Judith ever did. He opens their old shared folder on Google Drive. It's been scrubbed. Only one file remains, a scanned copy of the post-nuptial agreement. His initials still visible at the bottom, next to hers. He'd called it a formality at the time. Now it's a tombstone. He thinks of calling her, just to hear her voice, just to ask how she's doing, not to beg, just to pretend, for 5 minutes, that she might still care. But he knows what she'd say. We already did. So instead, he pulls the blanket over his chest and tries not to cry, because Barry is still awake, and Barry would never let him forget it. He's alone. Not just temporarily, existentially, because Judith didn't just move out, she moved on. And now he's the one scrolling through memories that don't belong to him anymore. Sitting in an empty room, finally feeling what she felt for years, left behind. The wine was chilled, the hydrangeas were in full bloom, and for the first time in years, every laugh echoing off the patio felt unforced. It had been 4 months since the party. The party. The one where Paul decided to take a sledgehammer to our marriage in front of 50 people and a professional photographer. But today wasn't about him. Today was about the garden condo I now called home. Mine. And only mine. It was smaller than the apartment, sure, but brighter. Every corner was something I chose. No more dark leather couches he insisted felt masculine. No more mounted TV the size of a small theatre screen blasting political commentary while I tried to read. No more passive-aggressive piles of laundry left on the foot of the bed like breadcrumbs for attention. Now it was white curtains that breathed in the afternoon air, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a kitchen that opened onto a tiny garden I planted myself, parsley, thyme, and one stubborn tomato plant that refused to bear fruit. I loved it anyway. It was scrappy, like me. Friends came early, bearing cheese boards and bottles of Sauvignon Blanc. Someone brought a lemon tart that made everyone groan with joy. My daughter Rachel arrived last, all smiles and bare shoulders, and walked in like she owned the place. She kissed my cheek and whispered, "God, Mum, you look dangerous." I laughed. I feel well rested. That's close. Barry was there too, surprisingly. He brought a giant plant and a sheepish grin. "Peace offering," he said, "from the house of the damned." I hugged him. Even Barry deserved a second act. We toasted at sunset. Not a formal speech, nothing rehearsed. Just Rachel, standing in the center of the garden with her wine glass raised. The golden light caught her hair, and for a split second, I saw her at 12 again. Shaky voice, braced teeth, awkward confidence. "To my mother," she said. "To new chapters, to clean slates, and to knowing when to burn the blueprint and start again." Everyone clinked glasses. Someone yelled, "Hell yes!" and the rest followed. I didn't cry. I didn't feel heavy or fragile or nostalgic. Just present, whole. And no, Paul wasn't invited. Not because I wanted to exclude him out of spite, but because there wasn't a place for him anymore. Not at the table, not in the guest list, not in my orbit. He was part of the old chapter, the one where I bent myself small to fit into someone else's frame. Now the frame was mine. And the picture? Unfinished. But mine, too. I'd kept one thing from the old apartment, a ceramic bowl we bought on our honeymoon in Tuscany. It had a crack running through it from one of our many moves. I placed it on the center of the table and filled it with lemons. When someone asked why I kept it, I said, "It's a reminder. Even things that break can still be beautiful and useful." Later, as the guests filtered out and twilight settled over the garden like a silk shawl, I sat alone for a moment on the patio. The air smelled like basil and wood smoke from a nearby fire pit. I tilted my face toward the sky, not to make a wish, not to ask for anything, just to enjoy the quiet. Because this wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the start of something entirely mine, and no one had to clink a glass to know it.